Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Sunday, March the 13th, and welcome to our commentary. Today, we're going to be talking about a national conversation. If you've been watching the news, reading your favorite newspaper, or catching your favorite blog, or whatever, we're having a very serious conversation in the country about energy. And I think the question a lot of people are asking is how did we get in this mess? How did we get into a situation where 15 months ago, you could fill your tank with gasoline that was around $2, and now you're paying 4 and it's going up? How did we get into that situation? How did we get into a situation where 15 months ago, under President Trump, we were producing lots and lots of energy, and now we're not? How did this happen? Exactly what happened? And I think a lot of the country is asking that question. And if you look at the polling data, most Americans would like to see the United States produce energy, would like to see the United States actually go out and generate its own energy, and then that way we don't have to rely on other people. And when you look at the map of the United States, when you look at the map of North America, I mean, there's a lot of energy here. You've got Texas, you've got Alaska, and then when you add to this Alberta, Canada, I mean, there's enough oil in North America to take care of our needs and take care of a few other people as well. So, for example, right now in Europe, countries who could have a shortfall in energy, we could easily take care of them with the energy that we have. So the question is, how did we get into this mess? How is it possible that, again, in 15 months, we went from where we were in extremely strong position when it came to oil to the situation we're in right now, which is not something that most Americans understand or support? Well, it's always like everything else. The answer is always complicated. But I think clearly what we are watching is when we went from Trump to Biden, what actually happened is that we went from people under the Trump administration who understood the importance of oil, and not just in the family budget, but also as a geopolitical weapon. We went from that to a Biden administration that is completely in the pockets of the climate change activists. Now, I want to say it again because I always get emails from people or comments from people that I'm a climate change denier. I'm not denying anything about the climate change. Here's what I know. Here's what I know. Most of the energy needs in the United States right now are supplied by fossil fuel. Now, I'm not against renewables. I'm not against developing alternatives. I would love to see us, for example, use something other than oil to take care of our needs. But none of that is available right now. None of that is available right now. Most of the stuff that you consume and most of the stuff that we go from point A to point B, most of the automobiles that we drive in this country, they work because of fossil fuels, because of gasoline. So we can't just go from, a world depending on fossil fuels to a world depending on green energy overnight. And unfortunately, many of the people in the Biden administration thought that we could do that. So they began to go after oil production. They made it more difficult to produce oil, to explore for oil. And this, of course, drove up the price and brought down the output. So as a consequence, we find ourselves in the situation. And again, a lot of Americans don't understand why. And that's why a lot of Americans, if you look at poll after poll after poll, they're telling the pollsters, we want more American exploration. We want more American energy. And we can get that. We can get that. We can try to be as clean as we possible, as friendly to the environment as we possible. And yes, we should continue to do whatever we can to develop other sources, other alternatives to fossil fuels. I'm all for that. I'm all for that. For example, I remember a few years ago talking to a friend of mine from Brazil who was telling me that their automobiles were running in some kind of alcohol that came from sugar cane. That would be great. I would love to see that. I would love to explore that. I have no, let's say, personal commitment or personal investment or personal attachment to the fossil fuel industry. I just know that right now, that is our most reliable source of energy. And how we got into this mess again, we got into this mess because the Biden administration has been taken over by these climate change activists who've turned climate change into a religion. It's no longer a national policy, it's a religion. And they are crazy about destroying the petroleum industry without taking into consideration the impact that it will have on the economy. And we're watching it right now. We are watching what happens when you let these people run things. So I think if there's a silver lining to what we're going through, and I say if there is, I mean it's a big stretch. If there is a silver lining, is that I think more and more Americans are really seeing firsthand how important it is to have a rational energy policy. Rational energy policy, meaning you've got people running things who understand the resources you have, and you've got people running things who are not committed to resources that you don't have. So I think that's the silver lining of all of this. Eventually, we'll go through this. Eventually, Ukraine will be history, whatever happens one way or the other. But I think the lesson that the country has learned and the conversation we're having is that we better be better prepared for a crisis like this, and we better understand that right now, at least in the next 10 to 20 years, gasoline is the only option that we have. Now, that doesn't mean, again, as I said before, that you don't consider other options. But right now, gasoline is the best option we have. And we better do whatever it takes to make sure that we've got enough oil flowing so that we don't have to worry about what's happening right now. Gasoline right now is in the Dallas area, it's over $4. In some parts of the country, it's around $5. And many people are estimating that it could easily hit $5 here in Texas. Now, the impact that's going to have on the economy is going to be devastating, because the cost of anything, I heard that 30% of the cost of what we buy, whether it's milk, whether it's lettuce, whether it's meat, whatever we buy, 30% of the cost is transportation. So these truck drivers who are taking this stuff across the country or across town, their costs are going up too, and they're going to have to pass that on. So that's the inflation that we're seeing right now. And the inflation is going to get a lot worse because we really have not seen the impact of this very recent increase in the price of oil. The other thing, of course, that I think a lot of economists are predicting, and I think it's a fair prediction, is that all of this is going to lead us into a recession. So, again, I go back to my earlier point. A lot of Americans are asking, how did we get here? How did we get to this point? Well, we got to this point because of a disproportionate attention to sources of energy that are not available, that are not reliable. And that's what made all of this possible. Had we been following the energy policies of the Trump administration, this energy crisis wouldn't be happening. I also think one of the things that the Trump energy program understood was how oil can be used as a geopolitical weapon, and we're certainly seeing that with Putin. I mean, there's no question about that he's using oil to do what he's doing. So, again, the silver lining of all of this is that the country's having a conversation about energy, and you're going to see more and more people, including Democrats, say, "Hey, wait a minute. We have to rely on what we have, and we can dream about green energy, but we have to rely on what we have." 80%, these are two different polls that came out. 80% of the American people believe that we should look for oil here and develop more of our energy supplies here. 80% means that's a lot of Democrats. So that is, as I said, the silver lining, the one and only silver lining of this very terrible crisis that we are having. I mentioned that there are some things going on with the Beto O'Rourke campaign. It's very interesting because the Beto O'Rourke campaign seems to be stuck where they've been for quite some time, which is around 40%. The last 11 polls that have come out show the campaign at 40%. That's the average, 40%. And he doesn't seem to be able to crack that. He's stuck there. Now, maybe he'll go up a little bit. I'm sure he will. But for the time being, if you look at the last 11 polls, he's at 40%. The governor is at almost 49, and he's at 40, almost 9 points difference between the two. And here recently, we've seen a couple of changes in the Beto campaign, and that he is flip-flopping on some issues. Like, one of his famous lines was that he was going to take away your AR-15. Well, he's kind of backing down on that a little bit. And the other issue that where he's flip-flopping is when he said he doesn't believe that CRT, critical race theory, should be taught in schools. He thinks that that's more for law schools and stuff like that. And a lot of people are wondering, why is Beto doing this? What is the reason for doing this? And I don't understand it either, because he's not winning over people like me who are not going to vote for him because we just don't think he's qualified. But I think when you start flip-flopping on issues like critical race theory, you may start losing your own voters who are not going to be as excited about your campaign as they were before. So again, why is Beto doing this? His campaign seems to be lacking focus at the moment. He's also attacking the governor in a very personal way, which again, that might be very effective with people who support your campaign, but that's not effective if you want to reach the middle of the country. I mean, the fact is that Governor Abbott, not a perfect governor, not a perfect candidate, but he's a fairly decent guy. And I think most Texans think he's doing a pretty decent job, given the fact that we just went through COVID and we went through the situation of the border and all of that. So I think for Beto to be attacking the governor in such a personal way, I don't think it's an effective strategy. And all the flip-flopping, I don't think that's a very effective strategy either. Well, let me finish with a post that I have over at the American Thinker. You can check it at the American Thinker, or you can catch it in my blog, and it has to do with Henry Aaron, the Major League Baseball player, the all-time home run king, at least in my opinion. I know that Barry Bonds or Bobby Bonds or Barry hit more home runs, but I think many people like me believe that it was Henry Aaron. But anyway, that's for another topic. But on this day in 1954, Henry Aaron was a young player trying to break into the Major League team. He went to the Braves spring training, and he was a young player with a good reputation. But I think most people back then, back in spring training 1954, thought that he was not going to get into the Major League team. They were probably thinking, okay, he'll make it to the AAA and then eventually make it to the Major League later. But there was a break in Henry's career when veteran Tommy Thompson was injured, and that created an opening in the Major League roster, and Henry Aaron was able to fill that position, and he stayed in the Major Leagues for the next 23 seasons. His first home run came in the first 2 weeks of the 1954 season, and of course we know the rest of the Henry Aaron story. So on this day in 1954, March 13th, 1954, an injury to Tommy Thompson, a veteran with the Braves. Some of you baseball fans may remember that Tommy Thompson was the one who hit that home run. The Giants win the pennant back in 1951. But he was at camp. He was supposed to be the veteran on the Major League roster, suffered an injury, and a young player by the name of Henry Aaron made it into the roster. And we know the rest of the story. So you never know when your break is going to come in life. You never know when you're going to catch that break, and you got to be ready for it. And Henry Aaron was ready for it, because he never looked back. He never went down to the minor leagues after making the team in spring training 1954. Thank you for listening. And if today is your birthday, happy birthday. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas.